and a human pants, isn't it? But for dogs, it's just normal behaviour. It's what dogs do. But why do dogs pant? Well, there's two really common reasons, I think. And the first one is to oxygenate the blood. So the most common reason why dogs pant year-round is when they exercise. When we exercise as humans, we breathe quickly, but for dogs, when they exercise, the quick way they breathe is by panting. And when they pant, air rushes in and out very quickly out of their lungs, and that allows really rapid exchange of oxygen with carbon dioxide. And that means that all the carbon dioxide that builds up when they're exercising gets excreted quickly, and new, fresh oxygen rushes in, and that allows them to recover from exercise more quickly. So exercise is probably the most common reason why dogs pant. But of course there is another reason why they pant, and that's very different to anything that we humans do, and that's for heat loss. So when we humans get hot, when we're exercising again as a good example, or just being out in the sunshine, what we do is we sweat. We sweat from our face, from our arms, from our bodies. We sweat all over. And when we sweat, fluid comes to the surface of our skin, and as that fluid evaporates, it takes heat with it. And sweating is a very effective way of losing heat. Now, dogs can't sweat. They do sweat from the soles of their feet, but obviously that's not going to give them a great deal of heat loss. So they lose heat in a different way, and they lose heat by panting. So if you can imagine, it's kind of like if we didn't sweat at all and we had to lose all the fluid that evaporates from our body from the surface of the skin, if we had to condense that to one area and instead had to lose all that fluid from our tongue, that's what dogs do. So in other words, it's like they're sweating, but it's from their tongue. And so just as when we're sweating a lot, we have to drink fluid to replace the sweat, so dogs need to drink a lot when they're losing heat by panting. So how it works, you see, is basically their mouth produces saliva that makes the tongue moist. They then stick their tongue out, the tongue swells up. Like when I stick my tongue out to pretend I'm panting, it kind of goes, you can hardly even see my tongue. When a dog does it, it's the equivalent of a tongue coming out of my mouth and going right down below my chin. Ooh, like that. So a dog's tongue swells up when it's panting. So it swells up, it's moistened by the saliva, and as they pant, air rushes in and out, in and out. And as the air rushes over the surface of the tongue, it evaporates fluid, moisture from the tongue, and as that moisture evaporates, it carries heat with it. So that's why dogs pant. Because in that situation, for heat loss, they pant because the heat is actually being extracted from their body. So that's why dogs pant more on warm days or in the sunshine. And indeed, after they've exercised, as well as having to reoxygenate their blood, they also need to lose heat. So heat control is a really big reason for dogs panting. I think that there are some other reasons as well, things like anxiety. A dog that's anxious, one of the signs you can see is that they pant more. So I'll often find dogs in the waiting room at the vets, they'll be, rather than just sitting there breathing quietly, they'll be sitting up, looking around, obviously a little bit anxious, and they're panting as well. So it's also a behavioural thing that dogs do sometimes. Should owners be worried about a dog panting? I think there's one instance when you should be worried, and that is when a dog gets heat stroke. One of the main signs of heat stroke is that a dog is panting all the time. Most dogs, they're in a sort of controlled environment where they're not getting too hot. They'll be panting a bit, but then they'll not be panting in between times. So they might pant, and then they might walk across the room and lie down not panting, and then they might pant again. But if a dog is doing nothing but panting, if a dog is sitting there panting continuously for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that's a sign that things may be going out of control and they may be going too hot. And as well as that, with heat stroke, their behaviour changes and they become less active, and they just want to lie down all the time. They don't want to move. And these are signs that you need to take some sort of action to stop your dog from being so hot. Panting shouldn't only be a noisy thing. That's another thing I want to mention. It's quite quiet. I mean, it's kind of, okay, it's air moving in and out, so it's kind of But especially in some types of dog, older Labradors, an example, their panting becomes very noisy. It kind of goes, Now that is something to be worried about, because what's happening there is that the larynx is getting a little bit too narrowed. In Labradors especially, there's this problem called a paralysed larynx, and that means that the larynx can't open as wide as it should do. It's too narrow, and so that means that the air can't get in and out without making a noise. So if a dog is panting and making noisy breathing at the same time, then that's something extra to be worried about. And if I was you, I would take a video of your dog doing that and show that to your vet, because sometimes it's an intermittent behaviour which is quite hard for to explain to vets. A video can paint a picture of a million words. If you're enjoying these videos, don't forget to subscribe. And as well as that, if you've got any comments or questions, just put the comments below and I'll get back to you in due course.